Okay, so let's use what we learned to do the number sense questions. I know it says show math down here, but I'm going to start working up here. What is the value of the expression negative 12 divided by negative 6 plus 3? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure we understand what's actually happening in this question. When it's written like this with this line, that means you need to divide by everything underneath. So having it under this line really is like having brackets around here. And we need to do brackets first. So I'm going to leave the numerator alone and do the math with the bottom denominator. So here we go. We have a negative 6. So a lot of calculators have this plus or minus button, and that will change the sign on the calculator of the number. So I have negative 6, and I want to add 3. I get negative 3. Write it down. So now I have negative 12 divided by negative 3. I always take it in two parts. I look at the signs. If the signs are the same, I know my answer is going to come out to be positive, and then I just do the math. 12 divided by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So the answer is positive 4. Now even though there's no signs on these, it doesn't really matter. If there's no sign, it really means positive. So the answer is C. Okay, so let's go on to number 2. Which value of x makes the equation 1 plus square root of x equal to 10 true? Now you might want to go ahead and guess right away, but it's not really a good idea. So I do this one a little bit differently. So I have this number, 1 plus the square root of something equals 10. Well, and this square root might worry some people. You could maybe not worry about it. Okay? You could actually just look at it first. What would add up to 10? And you can think about this. If I subtract 1 from this side and subtract 1 from that side, I do the same thing on both sides. I get the square root of x equals 9. And I think, well, that makes sense. If I add 9 to 1, I get 10. So now I have to go ahead and remember, what does square root mean? Okay? What's the opposite of square rooting? Well, the opposite of square rooting is actually squaring or multiplying by itself. So that actually gets rid of the square root, and I get x equals 9 squared. Well, what is 9 squared? Well, 9 squared is 9 times 9, and that is 81. Now we could go ahead and say, well, does that make any sense? I could put it back in my formula and just check it. I have the number 1. I take the square root of 81. Use your calculator. Square root happens to be a second function on here, which means it's an orange one because it's in orange here above. And I put the number 81 and I get 9. And there we go, 1 plus 9, and that equals 10. So that was just really a check. That was extra. Our answer is x is equal to 81. Now let's take a look at their answers and say, well, how did they mess you up a little bit? Well, they messed you up a little bit. They chose 9 because they want you to mix up and say, well, this number's 9, but they're not asking for the square root of it. They want the actual number, okay? Now 18, they threw that in there maybe to trick you because it's really just 81 with the digits mixed up. And the reason they chose 3 is, well, because the square root of 9 is 3, and they are thinking if you mix up square and square root, that's why they chose that one. So let's go ahead and do number 3. Number 3, here we go. Which expression is a simplified form? So there was 2 ways we did this in class. One way is to distribute. We have this term right here, and we have to multiply it by this term and this term. So we use these little arrows. Some people call it a rainbow, and I need to make sure I do that. So the way to distribute it is to multiply by each term. So there's the negative 2x, and I need to multiply that by negative 4x. Okay, then I want to add that, and there's my negative 2x again, because I need to multiply it by 3. Which is the second term in the brackets. Now you go ahead and do the math. Negative 2 times negative 4. Well, it's a negative and a negative, which I know is a positive. And 2 times 4 is 8. Now I also have this thing of the x times the x, where we have to remember, well, what is x times x? Well, how many x's are that? That means that there's 2. So it's back to exponents. If there's 2 x's, the exponent tells me how many x's there are. Bring down the sign here. Now let's do the math. Negative, and if there's nothing in front of it, it means it's a positive. So negative times a positive is negative. 2 times 3 is 6. And x times, oh, there's no x there. But we can multiply, even though if there's nothing there, it means that there's still 1x. Now this isn't the most simplified. So if there's a positive in front, it's just the same as having nothing. But here we have 2 signs, and these are different. So that means that it's going to be negative. We have 6x. And there's my simplified form. 8x squared minus 6x. And let's see if we can find it. Well, it's not these ones, because these both have negatives. So it's one of these two. And here, this must be it, because it has the negative or minus in front of the 6x. And you can see there, one little error, either whether you made the mistake here or you're just not paying attention. Pay attention to the signs. It's one place where us math teachers always seem to trick you up. Now the other way that some students did it in class, they like to make a little chart. You end up getting the same answer, okay? But think of it like this. You write down this first term here, and then you need to multiply the second term, the first term in the brackets, and our second term is positive 3. Then here's where you make sure that you multiply each term. So you can see here we get negative 2x times negative 4x. And then I'm going to multiply negative 2x times positive 3. And you can see if you look up here, it's the exact same terms. It's just a different way of rearranging to make sure you do everything. Then you still have to get these together. Negative and a negative is a positive. 2 times 4 is 8. And an x times an x is x to the power 2 because there's 2 x's. Here we have a negative and a positive. So that's negative. 2 times a 3 is a 6. There's only 1 x. We end up getting the exact same answer. Different methods. It doesn't matter which one you use. Whichever one that you like better, use it. All right, what is the expression right here? So this is a BEDMAS question. I've got brackets, and again, this long line, you can treat this as brackets as well. So I have the 5, and I'm going to do negative 18 plus 12 on my calculator. Negative 18 plus 12. And I get negative 6. Now make sure you keep your brackets, because if you don't, it's going to look like you're subtracting 6 when actually it's 5 times negative 6. All right, now if you want, we can leave this for later, a little bit later. So the top, and now the denominator, I think I wrote that down wrong, that's actually a negative 4. Okay, so we have a negative 4 plus 1. Negative 4 plus 1 ends up being negative 3. So now that we have it like this, now we do our multiplication in order. I'll take care of the numerator first. This is like a positive value, so 5, so we have a positive and a negative, which means it's going to be negative, and 5 times 6 is 30. Put the line across. There's no more work to do on the denominator. So now I go ahead and look at the signs. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. And then I go ahead and do the math with just the numbers. 30 divided by 3 is 10. So you go ahead and look up here and say, oh, look at that. They put a negative and a positive. I know positive. That's that. Okay? Now, with these 6s, probably if you did something out of order, that's why you'd get a 6. So make sure you're following BEDMAS.